Hi.
Hi.
Sorry for disturbing you. I just want to ask you some question regarding the mental illness. Do you know what is depression?
Yes, heard of it. Depression. Yeah, I think something to do with mental illness, is it?
Do you know what is depression?
I think I have some idea. It's a type of mental illness. Sometimes people use the word general, in general, like just for being sad. But in terms of medicine, it's called clinical depression.
So, have you ever encountered a depressed person?
No.
No.
So far, no.
I think I may have. I can't remember, but I may have come across.
No. Okay. So do you think depression is treatable?
Yes.
Depression is treatable.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. So do you think depression is treatable?
Yes, definitely.
Assalamualaikum, hello and welcome everyone to our very first ever IMU Library video podcast. We name it as Library Talk, Love Yourselves. So I'm Miss Nurul, and as you know, last year we have launched Minutes of Knowledge podcast, and you can check out the link on the description below after this. For this year, I'm so excited because we just started our first library talk podcast, which you may watch on the IMU Library YouTube channel. Okay, so the concept of this podcast is this time is not just about a book review, but we also will discuss and share a certain interesting topic and current issue that you guys should looking for it. I believe that you guys can guess what is our topic from our first teaser video. So yes, today we will discuss about the ins and out about depression. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. So today, I feel so honored because I'm here with our special guest for this episode, Miss Wan Shazrina Binti Wan Ahamad Sabri. She is actually a clinical psychologist attached to self-development unit in IMU. She's going to share her expertise on psychology and, of course, on our topic, depression. Hi, Miss Shazrina.
Hi Nurul, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here.
You're welcome. What should I call you? Can I call you
You can just
Shaz?
call me Shaz.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I call you Shaz, yeah?
My name is quite long, Shazrina, so you can just call me Shaz.
All right, Shaz. I feel so happy because you are here today, and because when we're talking about depression, there are many things that I'm sure our viewers also have questions, a big question mark in some of the things that related to depression. But before we start, can you do the honor to introduce yourself and also your career journey?
All right, so my name is Wan Shazrina. I'm a clinical psychologist. I am actually very new to the university setting because before this I was in a hospital. I was working in a hospital. I have always been in the hospital line working in a clinical setting. So the cases that I've seen are more severe cases, more clinical cases. So cases like borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. So I'm very new to the university setting, so I'm excited to see, I'm excited to work together with students who are suffering from mental health issues.
Oh, I feel so small, you know.
I'm actually quite new to the field as well.
So when we read on the articles, news, or we Google, there are so many things related to mental illness. And the most popular is anxiety and depression. So could you tell us what is actually the difference between anxiety and also depression?
Okay, so the difference between anxiety and depression is, when we say depression, we usually refer to major depressive disorder. So depression is a persistent feeling of sadness, low mood. Okay, so people with depression tend to have symptoms like they lose pleasure in doing the things that they used to like. They don't, for example, you used to like going to karaoke, but now you don't like it anymore. You used to like hanging out with your friends, you don't like it anymore because you just have lost all the sense of pleasure in doing it. Anxiety, on the other hand, is a feeling of worry or uneasiness. So you feel difficulty to relax. Sometimes anxiety has many different types as well. So sometimes they might have panic attacks. Yeah, so it's more of feeling uneasy, feeling difficulty, worry, feeling difficulty to be relaxed.
Oh, okay. I see. Now I understand. So, actually, what is the cause of the depression? Is it because of genetic, environment, or too much of thinking of anything?
That's a very good question, Nurul. Previously, I would say in the last 30 years, maybe 30 years ago or 20 years ago, before there was this much research done on the causes of depression, a lot of physicians had the idea that depression came from a chemical imbalance in your brain. So solely from that. But over the years, there have been so many research done, and they have found that it's not just biological, it's a biopsychosocial. So 3 factors that contribute to why someone might develop depression. So biologically, you might have the genes, you might be predisposed with the genes for depression, especially if you have first degree relatives that have depression. So for example, your parents have depression or your siblings have depression, then you are more likely to have the genes for depression.
I see.
Yeah. So the second factor is psycho. So psycho is more, it looks at your temperament, so your personality. Some people are more neurotic. Neurotic means they tend to have a negative pattern of thinking. So some people are just more predisposed like that. Their personality is like that. And the third factor is social. So social looks at the environment that you're in. Okay, so remember how I was talking about the genes?
Yeah.
You might have the genes for depression, but the environment triggers whether you get depression or not. So it's bio, psycho, and social. So if you, for example, you grew up in an environment where you had child abuse, or you grew up in poverty, then these are situations where someone might be more predisposed or more at risk to developing depression. So biopsychosocial.
Okay, so most of the cause for depression is bio, psycho, and social.
So it's not just genes or not just biological.
Because I thought it's from the genes.
It's more so I think that's the old school of thought. Now more research has been done, and we are discovering that actually it's not just biological. There's many factors that contribute to it. Yeah.
Okay, now I know. Okay, so so before this, I thought that everyone who diagnosed with the depression are all same. Turns out I was wrong. So my next question is, usually people relate depression with teenager and also young adult. And we also noticed that nowadays people are more aware about their illness, and they tend to expose their that they have diagnosed with the depression or any other mental illness in social media. But I can see that most of them are teenager or young adult.
Okay. Yeah.
So how about children and also older adult?
Right, older adults.
Yeah, older adult. Does depression affect them too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a common misconception that only teenagers and adolescents and younger adults have depression, because they make up I think adults and teenagers are there's 3 times more adults and teenagers that have depression compared to children and older adults. So of course the bulk of the population or the demographics of people that have depression are within this age range. But of course children and older adults also experience depression as well. The thing, maybe one of the reasons why they are not really in the spotlight or people don't know that they have depression is when it comes to children. One, for younger children, they are not able to communicate and tell people that, first of all, they don't even know what depression is. And second of all, they can't communicate to, or they are not able to really communicate to adults and tell and say that, hey, I have depression, you know, because they don't even know what depression is. So that's for younger children. So younger children, from my experience, how they communicate is through their play.
Yes.
So you can see through their drawings, through their play that, you know, this is unusual. This is not how a typical kid would play, or these are not drawings that a typical kid, a typical 4-year-old would draw. Yeah. And for older adults, I'm talking about the 60 and above age group, they are also often overlooked. One is because, you know, sadly, a lot of them are neglected. And secondly, when you're 60 and above, you tend to have comorbid health issues. So you might have like hypertension, diabetes. So these physical illnesses tend to take more priority than your mental health. So even if you had, for example, someone might have diabetes, but at the same time they might be depressed, right? The diabetes gets treated is more of a priority than the depression part. Yeah, so that's why we don't really hear or we don't really see a lot of articles or coverage on depression in those 2 age groups, the younger age group and the older age group. A lot is more on the middle age group, the
teenager.
adult. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, so children and older also affected by depression, but maybe we don't have so much awareness about it. Okay, so our last question before we start a second segment is actually depression treatable? And if yes, what is the treatment for the depression?
Okay, so fortunately, yes, depression is treatable. So the treatment for depression usually consists of 2 parts. One is pharmacological and the second one is non-pharmacological. So medication and non-medication to be simple. In Malaysia, only psychiatrists can prescribe medication to treat mental health, mental disorders. Okay, so when it comes to non-pharmacological treatment, that's when mental health professionals like myself, you know, clinical psychologists, counselors, that's where we come in. And our main mode of treatment for non-pharmacological treatment is psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy.
Yes. So psychotherapy is my role, is what I do in my work. And psychotherapy is essentially talk therapy. So if you've seen in the movies where you know, the client comes in, sits on a couch, and then the therapist is in a couch, and then they talk, that's most probably psychotherapy. So psychotherapy, there's many types as well. There's CBT, if you've heard of CBT. I think CBT is the most well-known one. Cognitive behavior therapy. There's also DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. ACT, which is ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. There's so many. This is just a few, to name a few. And generally, individuals who receive medication and psychotherapy together have a better outcome compared to those who receive only medication.
I see.
Because we find that if they have medication only, they become dependent on the medication. Because in psychotherapy, we actually teach them how to cope with the problem. Right? So if they have medication and psychotherapy together, that's when they learn, okay, remember biopsychosocial? Yeah.
So they can know how they can handle the situation.
Yes, exactly. So we help to address the psycho and the social part. Psychiatrists tend to focus more on the bio part. So
I
that's
see.
why patients or clients that see that receive pharmacological and non-pharmacological treatment have better outcomes than if you just go to a psychiatrist.
I
Yeah.
see. So I just curious. Are there any? I mean, most of your patients before this, are your clients? Are they cured by the method that you use?
Yeah, I always get that question a lot. It takes a very long time.
Long time.
Okay, I wouldn't say very long time. It takes multiple sessions, and it takes contribution from the therapist and the patient. It's not a passive process where the therapist is just talking. The patient or the client needs to participate and contribute to the session as well. And yes, I have seen cases where my patients or my clients have improved. So for example, I had a patient before this, while I was working in the hospital. I had a patient who had severe social anxiety disorder. So this person would come into my sessions all covered up, cap, sweater, everything covered up. And with, I think, about 8 sessions, we did this thing called gradual exposure therapy, and eventually he was able to come to the sessions without being covered up, without being nervous. Yeah, because before that he was very, very nervous. So we do see improvements. It's just that it takes time for improvement.
But at the end of the day, it's actually the individual itself, right?
Yes, yeah. So there's no point helping, or no, there's no point coming for therapy if that person doesn't have insight. So you can't really force someone to go to therapy.
Yes, of course. Okay. All right. Now we know about what is depression, how the depression built in someone life, and also we know that actually depression treatable. All right, now we are in the second segment of this podcast, which is book review. In this segment, our guest will review and summarize what she has been reading recently. So let's get started. What is the book that you just read recently?
All right, Nurul. So the title of the book is Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solution. So this book right here, it's written by Johan Hari, published in 2018, so quite recent still. And the publisher is Bloomsbury. So I have to be honest, when I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. It's a really interesting book. I thought it was just going to be another book about, looking at the cover, I thought it's just going to be another book about depression. But I really learned a lot from the book.
See. So what about the book chapter? Can you elaborate on the topic or content discussed?
Sure. So the author starts off by sharing his experience with depression. So the author
his
actually
experience?
So he
I
actually had depression in his teenage years. I think like around 15 years old or something like that. So he started really early with diagnosed with depression, and this was probably like 20 or 30 years ago. I'm not too sure about the timeline. I think 20 years ago, and he describes how he was told by his psychiatrist that he had the psychiatrist explained to him that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. So everything back then was just biological. So the approach to treat his depression, he was prescribed with antidepressants. Okay? So at the beginning, he describes that, he really believed in antidepressants. It really worked for him. But after many, many, many years of being on antidepressants, he realized that it was getting less and less effective for him. So he decided to do a study. He interviewed many, many people all over the world to find out, does antidepressants or do antidepressants help with depression? And that's when he realized that it's not merely or solely a chemical imbalance in your brain. So in the book, he actually describes what other factors that causes depression. So I think there were
I
9 factors in the
see.
book. So I won't spoil the book for the readers, but he describes that it's more than just chemical imbalance in your brain. And
see.
what's also what's also interesting is that he describes, or he shares in the book, that when they compared, I might get this wrong, but he compared 2 groups. Not he lah. He looked at a study.
A study.
Study compared a group that took antidepressants and a group that took a placebo. So placebos are just sugar pills. It doesn't have medication in it. And they found that when they compared the 2 groups, the difference between those that took the placebo and those that took the antidepressants wasn't that significant. Which means that if you have depression, antidepressants are actually, this is what he says in the book, antidepressants are more of what you believe the medication can help you do. Yeah, so it's not really the chemicals or the medication in the antidepressants itself. So he uncovers this, and for me, I was like, oh my God,
So
everything that I've ever learned is changing, So that's why it was very interesting.
Okay, so would you recommend this book to the viewers?
Absolutely, I would absolutely recommend this book, and I would recommend this book not only to those who want to learn more about depression, but also to the people out there who want to learn how to have a more meaningful life. Because towards the end of the later chapters, he does describe what, I think, I can't remember how many steps, but he does describe how to have a more meaningful life. Because when you have a meaningful life, when you live according to your values, then that is a protective factor against depression. So it protects you against depression.
I see. Okay, so where can we, IMU library student or staff can get the book from?
I believe that it is available at the library. So yeah, come to the library, guys, and look for the book. You can look for Nurul and ask her for the book. I'm sure this will be a book that will be often borrowed by the students.
Based on your story, it's a very interesting book actually. Okay, so it's such a great sharing.
Thank
from you, even though I'm not like a student or medical student, but I also feel excited to read the book.
Yeah, you don't have to be a medical student to enjoy the book. I think anyone that picks up the book, will find it very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we are in the last segment of this episode, which is a random question. This segment, we will select 2 questions from staff or student, and our guest will answer the question. Are you ready?
I'll try.
Okay, so the first question I get from a student, he said that, "Hi Kak Nurul, recently I have read one post in Instagram which is about symptom of depression, and I found out that I have most of the symptom. So how should I react about it?"
All right. Okay. So what to do if you have symptoms or you feel like you have symptoms of depression? Okay. So maybe to reiterate, if you feel that you might have some symptoms of depression, such as you feel worthless, you feel guilt, you feel a loss of pleasure in the things that you used to like doing, or you experience significant weight loss over a month, low mood and social withdrawal, which means that maybe before this you used to like hanging out with your friends and now you no longer want to hang out with anyone, and it is affecting your daily functioning. For example, you can't focus in your lectures or you avoid hanging out with your friends, then the first step is to reach out. So reach out to someone you trust and tell them that you haven't been feeling like yourself or you haven't been feeling well. Okay? And you can also ask them to connect you to a mental health professional. Or you yourself can reach out to a mental health professional. So when I say mental health professional, I mean a psychiatrist, a clinical psychologist, or a counselor. Okay, so here in IMU, we have the student development unit. Okay, so we're on level 2, and we offer psychosocial support for IMU students free of charge. Okay, so if you feel like this is something that you need help with, then you can contact us via email to make an appointment. So you can email us at sdu@imu.edu.my or call or WhatsApp 03-273-17791 to make an appointment. So everyone in SDU are qualified mental health professionals. So we have a team of counselors and clinical psychologists like myself. All right. So you know that you are seeing someone who is trained to help with mental health issues.
Yes. So for IMU student or staff also can, right?
I believe that for the SDU, it's only we only cater to the students. However, for the staff, you can go to the clinic and see that there are clinical psychologists there as well.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So now I know. So students who maybe you feel different from yourself from before this and after this, you feel like different from yourself, maybe you can reach out. Okay, reach out first, and then if you feel that you need this psychologist or counselor, you can reach out to development unit. Okay, so the second question is, how do I help someone who thought has depression, and what is the risk of untreatable depression?
Okay, that's depression can be quite tricky because it develops gradually and insidiously. So which means that sometimes people or most people don't even realize that they are going down that spiral. Okay, and they only reach out for help when things are really, really bad. Okay, so unfortunately our society also tends to have this perception that mental health issues is something that you can solve by yourself. You don't need to go see a psychiatrist. You don't need help, because if you reach out for help, that means you are weak. So even more reasons for people to not seek help, because society doesn't encourage them to seek help, right? So some of the risks of not getting help for depression, so untreated depression, is you might develop addiction to substances like alcohol or drugs, because that's the quick fix, that's the short-term solution to your problems. But you realize that it's a slippery slope. Once you start, it will get worse. And some people even say that with untreated depression, it ruins relationships and it jeopardizes your work or university performance. So your studies can be jeopardized as well. So if you notice that someone is not like their usual self, so genuinely, what you can do as a friend or as someone, if you know that your loved one is going through depression, first step is to genuinely ask them, how are they doing? Okay, and you can even, if you're very close with this person, you can even point out that their behavior is different. They're not like their old self. Sometimes because they don't even realize that they're having depression, right? So you can point it out politely. And if they open up to you, always remember to be non-judgmental. So don't judge them. Some of the don'ts that you shouldn't say, like you should never say this to someone with depression, is you shouldn't give them a solution. Like if they come to you with a problem, you shouldn't say things like, just do this lah, or just give them an immediate solution. They're not asking for a solution. They actually just want to reach out for you to know that they're having this problem. Don't say, hey, you should be grateful for what you have. Other people have it worse, and you never say that. Try to avoid saying that. And try to avoid saying things like, this is because you're not religious enough, or you're not praying enough.
It's a common
advice.
We call it
very
advice.
common. So people with depression, they already have so much guilt and hatred towards themselves. So when you give these kind of comments, imagine how they would feel. They would feel even more self-blame, self-guilt. So try to avoid coming up with judgmental statements like that. So instead, what you should do is listen to them, try to empathize with them, try to connect them to mental health professionals. So, there are a lot of mental health services out there now that you can connect them to.
Yeah, okay. Anyone out there, if you find yourself need a help, you just try to seek a help. Reach out your friends, or if you brave enough to go to the psychologist, then just go. Okay, and for someone who might have friends or their loved one who need a help, then maybe you can use the step that just now Shaz share with us.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
so thank you. I think we already have end our session today. But before we end the session, do you have any last word or advice to our viewers out there?
All right. So, if you are listening to this podcast and you're hesitating to seek help, whether you want to seek help or not, maybe because you feel overwhelmed, you feel like, you're not brave enough to open up, I can assure you that the first step is the most difficult step. Okay? Once you take that step, once you reach out for help, it gets easier. Okay, so luckily for IMU students, we have the service. We have the self-development unit on level 2. So you can just drop by and we will guide you through it all. Okay, so seek help if you're really going through some difficulties right now.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you, Miss Shah.
Thanks, Nurul.
Yeah. So we hope all the valuable knowledge and sharing today will be beneficial to our viewers. So everyone, please be sure to come back on the next episode. There will be another exciting topic which we will discuss about the perfectionist. Okay, so what is a perfectionist? Person is a good or bad? Or are you a perfectionist? So if you want to know about this, please wait for our next podcast episode. Until then, so I'm Miss Nurul and
I'm Shazrina.
Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe us, and don't forget to love yourself. Okay, bye bye. Thank you.